Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, the NFL welcomes private equity into the box. It's the last sports league to accept PE funding. Patriots owner Robert Kraft says nothing will really change for fans.
We didn't do anything to change the substance of what makes our league so great.
And one of Vice President Harris's brain trust on economic issues, Bharat Ramamurti, explains the campaign's approach to America's revenue problem.
Over the last 20 years, we have seen an erosion of the tax code. If you go back to where we were in 2000 before the Bush tax cuts, about 20% of GDP was coming in revenue. Thanks to the Bush tax cuts and the Trump tax cuts, we're now closer to 16%.
All that today, plus a SpaceX launch postponed again. And hotel costs are sky high, so some people are getting their perks where they can.
Peanut M&M knockoffs. I told you what you can do.
What? You eat 3 of them and put it back?
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's so gross.
It's Wednesday, August 28th. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan. Andrew is off today. Let's talk a little bit about Warren Buffett. Berkshire selling more stock. His Berkshire Hathaway unloading another $982 million worth of Bank of America shares. That's according to a regulatory filing outlining sales on August 23rd, 26th, and 27th. Berkshire now trimming the stake in that bank by a total of almost 13%, generating $5.4 billion in profit. Berkshire still has Bank of America is still Bank of America's largest shareholder. They have nearly 904 million shares that are valued at nearly $36 billion. It's the second largest position in his stake. First position, of course, is Apple, and he sold a lot of that recently, too. We have people wondering what this means, this big hoard of cash that Berkshire has built up. I think before these sales of more than $5 billion in Bank of America, they had close to $190 billion in cash. And that's had a lot of people talking about whether he's saving up for a rainy day, whether he thinks something bad is going to happen. There was an interesting article that was out kind of analyzing it, though, taking a look at it, saying, look, it's really not out of the normal range when you're looking at what's happened. This is just Berkshire Hathaway's gotten so much bigger. There's so many assets. It's about 13% of assets in cash. That is a fairly normal level. If you look back to 2004, it was as much as 40% of their assets in cash. So it's what you have, the law of big numbers, when you have lots and lots and lots of cash and assets.
And he's been coming on for so long, and I don't ever remember a time where he didn't say, look, I don't know where the market's going to be tomorrow or next year or a year after that. I just know eventually the market's going to head higher. So he's always got a very positive view on the U.S. economy and how well we'll do versus the rest of the world.
He's also got a big cash pile in case anything ever does go.
There's no doubt in my mind
So-
that he's not feeling as great about things as he was 2 years ago. There's no doubt in my mind that he's ready to be opportunistic and have the dry powder to do what he went. And it's very cool that he's whatever he is. He's still waiting for opportunities at 94. Still waiting, when I'm 95 or 96, I'm going to move in big on something, and I'll have the. And my favorite, Charlie, my favorite quote ever. I still use it all the time when he said, when he was 99, he goes, "I'll tell you, man, I'm not nearly as sharp or energetic as I was when I was 96." And it's just it's like, please God.
It's very inspirational.
Let me say something similar to that. What was Warren? Warren had a good, I forget what he wanted on his tombstone too. He had something good like, no one believed this guy could possibly live that long, or something like that.
The oldest man who ever lived.
Yeah, oldest man in history.
And Charlie used to always say, I don't care. I don't want to know when I'm going to die. I just want to know where, so I never go there.
Never go there. That's my favorite thing. I wish that's true, but unfortunately we can't know either. The Polaris Dawn mission scrubbed this time due to weather. SpaceX once again delaying the launch of a rocket carrying 4 private astronauts. It was a helium leak that forced the cancellation of yesterday's launch attempt. SpaceX has not said when it may try for another launch for the mission, which is set to see the first ever and I think the highest commercial spacewalk. I don't think it matters.
Mike Massimino, the astronaut who was former Massimino, who was with us yesterday.
I mean, it matters for doing it, but I think when you look down, you're either way.
No, but he said there's way more radiation up there,
Right.
and there's way more space junk
debris.
up there. And that's,
but I'm just okay, if you're at 100 feet, you're scared. If you're at 1,000 feet, you're even more scared. When you're up at, however many miles it is.
those astronaut people, how they contain their fear is beyond me.
No, I know.
They're not afraid of such things.
They're not afraid of, the worst case scenario, which none of us really should be because we're all headed there. But
I'd like to take the slow train to that destination.
Yes, just like on the tombstone, the oldest person ever.
Right. The National Football League letting a few more players on the field. At a special league meeting, NFL owners voted in favor of allowing select private equity firms to buy up to a 10% stake of the team. The initial approved firms include Ares Management, Sixth Street Partners, and Arctos Partners, in addition to a consortium nicknamed the Avengers that includes Dynasty Equity, Blackstone, Carlyle Group, CVC Capital Partners, and Ludus, which is a platform that was founded by investor and former NFL running back Curtis Martin. Those firms collectively intend to commit $12 billion of capital to be raised over time. It's a big move. It's a lot of money. And we're going to hear all about this deal and what it could mean for the future of the league with New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft.
And we've talked about that huge complex up in Foxborough that
It's an amazing place.
Was involved with. And that may allow more of those types of things.
Right.
You have the money to build out from private equity.
And there are a lot of limitations on what the private equity can do. They don't really get a say in any of these issues.
Right.
Can only own up to 10%.
I don't know. They don't need me, but I want in on
Get your $5.
I don't think I'm ready to buy like a pickleball team.
I don't know. I've been shocked at
I
the
can't even
fans
pro
who've been watching
pickleball.
this
There are
stuff.
pickleball pros. Come on.
I am amazed, but as you've said it yourself, because of the gambling aspect, people will watch anything. Did you know there's a pillow fighting national championship? Yeah, look it up online. It's hilarious. I've watched some of it. Pillow fight, and it looks mean. You'd think, oh, I could play this. No, you can't.
See, that's this.
Look up pillow fighting. Like professional pillow fighting. It's guys who really
guys.
Yeah.
See, I immediately had this perverted.
You're thinking the
mud wrest. Some
no.
sick.
This is like legit, and it looks like it hurts.
Oil. Yeah,
check it out.
That's what I thought.
I'm not kidding.
More hotels are charging $1,000 or more a night. This is for an average. So I think for average daily rate, and I don't think they are. I think it's the bottom rung of what kind of room that we're talking about. For just the standard room, the Wall Street Journal, citing new data from global real estate analytics firm CoStar Group, said the number of U.S. hotels with an average daily rate of $1,000 plus in the first half of this year was 80. It doesn't seem like that many versus 22 back in 2019. And in Europe, the number tripled to 183. The increase has far outpaced the opening of new hotels. CoStar, which doesn't reveal the hotels in this category, says the totals are probably even higher because smaller luxury hotels and chains don't share data with the company. And like if you go to Washington, do you know how many other bells and whistles there are? This kind of tax, that kind of tax.
Right.
It's another $150.
Yeah.
Then valet is normally could be as much as $80.
Is that part of it though, or were they just saying
I don't think any of it. I bet you none of that is
included. Yeah.
The gummy bears, the
mini bar,
peanut M&M knockoffs. You can.
Yeah.
I told you what you can do.
About. What? You eat 3 of them and put it back?
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's so gross. But then you have to rip open the thing.
No,
there's usually
not really.
a sealed
Some
thing.
of them you can be, and then it's in. I would never do that. I would just. But
You're just explaining to other people how they could. And now you've guaranteed that I will never do that because that means somebody could get in there and touch any one of them. You've now guaranteed that I will never.
It's a laser light to see if it's still in there.
I will never ever
check
touch any of those.
They don't check.
Ever
You can
again.
actually go from what you can like almost like a gummy bears.
2 of these and 2 of those. I am never touching any of those again because I know you don't wash your hands.
Suit yourself. I do wash my hands. I make it look good. I mean, I don't. I'm neat. My hands aren't dirty, and I shower like 6 times a day. Don't we all?
No.
Tease will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, more on why the NFL has let $12 billion of private equity money into the chat with New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft.
We thought this was a great source of capital and could be done in a way that was very functional and wouldn't affect the operation.
What it means on the field and off, right after this. Welcome back to Squawk Pod. Football team owners voted yesterday to allow new investors in the valuable team franchises, private equity firms. The NFL is the last sports league to allow investors apart from wealthy individuals and families with enough cash on hand. 31 of 32 team owners voted to allow firms to buy up to a 10% stake. We heard from Sports Business Journal's Abe Madcourt Tuesday on our Squawk Box TV broadcast.
They're going to argue that it adds to the fan experience because they'll be able to use this investment to enhance the fan experience or enhance venues. I mean, it's going to be, they think, something that's going to drive the value of their operation.
This move was years in the making, and NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has defended it, saying that there are just fewer billionaires able to write the big checks required for teams that are now valued at billions of dollars. 3 firms and a consortium of a few additional firms are the first approved investors, who intend to commit about $12 billion in capital over time. Our Joe Kernan and Becky Quick spoke to one team owner about what this new capital infusion will mean to football.
Joining us now is Robert Kraft, Kraft Group Chairman and CEO and the owner of the New England Patriots. Now, honestly, Robert, it's good to see you. Thanks. But I don't think anything happens in the NFL with you not at least having some oversight or some type of say or at least some input on how it works. So you can probably tell us exactly how this came about and why it didn't come about before this. What was the thinking, Robert, for not allowing it?
Well, we've had a great committee that's worked on this for over a year. And, I think our league is unique in that we still have 32 individual owners. We have a very special culture. And we want to be mindful that we didn't do anything to change the substance of what makes our league so great. Now, in fairness, we have assets that have grown in value and are illiquid. And so seeing this as an opportunity where all these private equity, all the most prestigious funds were coming to us, and it was coming right from the top. There was a real interest. And we thought, it's an opportunity for us to really change how some of the ownership groups, have real problems with the illiquidity. They have big families and have to solve a lot of problems that are not usual. And so we thought this was a great source of capital and could be done in a way that was very functional and wouldn't affect the operation. What was required for governance and was very minimal. And so it's sort of like having a pool of capital of faceless investors that allow us to grow and build our asset.
Bob, we did talk about that great facility that you hosted us, as you recall, up in Foxborough at one point. I don't know why we haven't done it since then, but how did you...
Let's do it again.
We will take
that would be fun, yes.
That would be fun, but how'd you pay for all that? What was it? Would it be easier? If you had the opportunity to bring in some private equity, would it have been easier, or will it be easier from here on out for other cities to do something similar, or owners to do something similar?
Well, think about what's happened over the last 30 years. And I don't know how many businesses that on a compounded basis have grown at 13%. And I know in our case, that's what's happened. We paid $172 million for the Patriots, and one of your competitors just valued it at $7 billion. And I know Michael Ozanian is probably is the real guru that you trust when he comes out with it. But when you have a situation like that, and we have the very tight rules that we have in the NFL, having individuals be able to come in and invest is difficult. So it's a perfect addition, and limiting the investment to 10% is a way to keep it under control from our point of view.
What were the concerns? Can you paint a picture for me of if things went awry? What does that look like that held the league back for so long? I'm just, and then I guess, well, because it's only 10%, they really can't force you to do anything. What would you worry about that private equity firms
Well, they
would
have
do?
no governance rights. But look, in my opinion, each of us are privileged to own an asset that we're custodians of the local community. And we don't want ownership that's making money first. If you do your job and you present a good product, the community gets behind it. And you know, we're really, we share revenue. We really have a platform that, except for your unique stadium and how you run things locally, we do think we share our national revenue. So everyone's really has an opportunity to do very well. But we have very tight rules. We approve any new owner coming in. It has to pass by, I believe, 24 of 32 people. And we try to keep it tight because we want to keep the quality of our business the way it is now.
What's it look like this year? I just need to know for the Patriots. Should I start betting on the Patriots again this year, Bob, and how are you feeling about it?
Well, it's the first time in 25 years we have a new team leading it. I'm excited. I think we're laying a great foundation. I don't know what our record will be this year, but I'm very excited to see Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh working as a team, really doing something special. We're privileged. It's the first time we ever drafted number 3 in the draft. We have a great young quarterback in Drake May, and we're excited about the future.
Well, if you didn't in the past, if you didn't trade for a high draft pick, how are you ever going to get a high draft pick? And actually, I was going to actually say, in this current environment, you've had too much success. You have exacerbated the wealth gap of teams winning Super Bowls and teams not winning Super Bowls. You've had too many. You've had plenty, and we need to, I think we need to spread it around a little bit, which brings us to the political environment. What do you want to weigh in on anything? How you like the competing business plans from the two different sides? You always like to weigh in on this stuff, Bob.
Well, look, we're privileged, you and I and everyone listening, to be in the greatest country in the world. And, you know, I think it's important that our political leadership understand that. We've started this foundation to combat hate. This blue
it's starting again at Cornell, Bob. It's disgusting. I know. I saw it yesterday.
Well, it's horrible, and it takes away from the great values of this country. So we need everybody to stand up arm in arm, and you know it goes back to what Martin Luther King said in his I Have a Dream speech. The greatest enemy is silence. When one individual sees something going on that's inappropriate for other people in this country to stand up. All of our ancestors came here with a great chance to evolve and do their thing and grow, and we have to keep that spirit alive. I know this is what this country has done for me. I went to school on scholarship. I had a chance to do everything I needed. We want to keep that vibrant. So
Okay.
let's hope the administration that does it best.
Okay. It reminded me of football. Right away, I felt a punt. Coming when I asked you that question, and it was about a 60-yarder. But thank you, Bob.
He's talking about what it matters to him.
That's right. Thank you, as you do.
Becky,
Thanks, Robert
great
Kraft.
to hear your voice. Joe,
Okay.
we love you guys. Best
Thank you.
program. Thank you.
That's nice of you to say. Thank you.
Next on Squawk Pod, the latest from the Harris campaign's economic agenda, a plan to tackle capital gains and maybe equalize the tax system. We will hear from an outside advisor to Vice President Harris, Bharat Ramamurti.
For people who earn most of their income through a large investment portfolio, over the course of their lifetime, the effective rate that they pay on that is a lot lower than somebody who goes in and teaches school every day.
This is Squawk Pod.
Stand by, Joe. In 3, 2, 1. His mic. Cue.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernan, along with Becky Quick. Andrew's off today.
Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will be sitting down for an interview on CNN tomorrow night. Investors are hoping to learn more about their economic plan, and joining us right now to talk more about that is Bharat Ramamurti, who served as the deputy director of the National Economic Council under President Biden and is an informal economic advisor to the Harris for President campaign. And Bharat, thank you for being here. I'm very glad to have you here today because there's an article on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that lays out what they say is Harris's tax policy, her plan that she'd like to put in place. And it's not very often that we get someone who kind of understands the ins and outs, who can talk us through these things. I realize that in order for some of these things to happen, it would have to mean that Kamala Harris not only won the White House, but you sweep in both houses of Congress. But let's talk through the wish list just so investors can really get their heads around some of these things. Under her plans, taxes on high-income households will go up. We've kind of known that's the plan. Top marginal rates would reach the highest point since 1986. That's 44.6% on all income versus right now you've got 23.8% on capital gains and just over 39% on wages. Why don't we talk about why you think that has to happen and what the ramifications might be?
Sure. Well, a couple points from that article that I think are worth emphasizing. Number one, for people who make under $400,000 a year, which is the vast majority of Americans, their taxes would either stay the same or go down under the Harris plan. In fact, for 100 million Americans, they would get a tax cut under the Harris plan. As for very, very high-income Americans, you're right. There's going to be some tax increases under the plan. They're largely focused on capital income, and I think it's a common sense policy to make sure that we address the problem that we have right now, which is that for people who earn most of their income through a large investment portfolio, over the course of their lifetime, the effective rate that they pay on that is a lot lower than somebody who goes in and teaches school every day or drives a bus or works on the factory floor. I think that that's unfair, and I think most of the American people agree with that. So as we're looking for revenue to bring in to do this in a fiscally responsible way, it's a source of income, a source of revenue that makes a lot of sense.
Bharat, let's just talk about that. I mean, we can talk about people who have inherited wealth, and that's an entirely different story. But a lot of people who have worked their whole lives have put money into the stock market as a savings plan to make sure that they're saving money over time and allowing that to appreciate. That's money they already paid average wage taxes on. And that then goes into capital gains. Our stock market has done very well because you have capital gains taxes that are lower. It's an incentive for people to invest. If you take that away, what's the potential in terms of what it means for the market?
Again, look, this new rate would apply to a very small sliver of folks. On the capital gains side, you're looking at people who are making over $1 million each year on which this higher rate would apply. And look, I hear the same argument over and over again. You heard it when President Clinton was running, when President Obama was running, when President Biden was running, that these are radical ideas that Democrats are pursuing. But if you just look at the scoreboard over that time period, out of the 51 million jobs that were created during that period, 50 million came under Democratic presidencies. And if you look at the stock market specifically, since you asked about that, the average annual return under Democratic presidencies have been higher than under Republican presidencies. So I really think this idea that Democrats are pursuing radical policies is a myth that's being perpetuated largely by very rich people who like the fact that Republicans will cut their taxes and Democrats won't.
Let me address that very point. Andrew Lotz in this Wall Street Journal story says, and he's an associate director at the Bipartisan Policy Center, says, these would represent sea changes in how we have taxed wealthy individuals and families over the last several decades, and that's not an argument for or against them, but these are sea changes. This is not what we've seen under President Clinton or others, and a big part of that is taxing unrealized gains. Under the Harris plan, capital gains for households making at least $1 million would be taxed at ordinary income. Unrealized capital gains above $5 million per person exclusion would be taxed at death. That tax would have some exemptions for family businesses, but you are talking about taxing unrealized gains at levels that we haven't seen in the past, have never seen before.
Well, I'm glad you brought up unrealized gains, because I think it's an important clarification, because there's multiple proposals here. The tax on unrealized gains applies only to people with assets over $100 million. And just to emphasize how small a group that is, that's about less than 1/2 of 1% of Americans, about 60,000 people in the entire country. And yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable, given the flawed system that we have right now for capital taxation, that people in that very exclusive category be able to be taxed on unrealized gains. And there's all sorts of exceptions and deferrals within that proposal to make sure that if you're a founder of a company, you don't have to sell your company in order to pay those taxes right away. You can spread it out over an extended period of time, and so on. And again, it comes back to the fact that we have a system where folks in that category are paying much lower rates over the course of their lifetime than people who earn ordinary wage income, who are making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. And look, I just think it's important to step back and realize why we're doing this. Over the last 20 years, we have seen an erosion of the tax code. If you go back to where we were in 2000 before the Bush tax cuts, about 20% of GDP was coming in revenue. Thanks to the Bush tax cuts and the Trump tax cuts, we're now closer to 16%. And so fundamentally, what we have right now is a revenue problem. If we went back to the tax code we had in 2000, the national debt would actually be going down. And those tax cuts have largely gone to the very, very rich. So all these policies that
First of all, those tax cuts are expiring next year anyway, so it's going to be something that has to be dealt with.
And it's a spending problem, Bharat. It's 23% of GDP is being spent. It's usually about 19 or 20%, and it's the long-term average is not 20% of revenues. It's about 18%, and we're at about 17%.
Well, Joe, I just got to disagree on. I got to point something out.
You can't disagree on actual numbers.
No, I got to say that spending is going up.
What's the long-term spending average? And Harris wants to spend more than what we're spending right now. So what's the long-term percentage of spending to GDP? What do you say it is?
Our spending is going. Everyone knew this back in 2000, that spending would go up on programs like Social Security and Medicare because the baby boomer generation would be retiring. If we had the tax code that we had in 2000, if you look at what's called non-defense discretionary spending, which is spending other than Social Security, Medicare, and other than defense, that is actually historically low right now. So
but overall,
the source
23%.
of our problem. No, because of Social Security and Medicare and so on. And those are anticipated increases because people are retiring. Look, we're about $35 trillion in debt right now. $8 trillion of that, about a quarter of it, came under the Trump presidency. And there was an article actually I saw on your own website, CNBC, last night, saying that the Trump plan would significantly increase the deficit.
Bharat. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. That was CNBC.com.
But just to get to the point, the Trump plan would significantly increase the deficit a lot more than the Harris plan. So if you're out there and you're concerned about the deficit, it sounds like you guys are. It sounds like a good reason to vote for Harris.
Look, deficit spending is an issue. The reason that we're coming up with these Social Security problems and the like is because we knew that the spending was going to have to go up. We haven't dealt with that. We have not had anybody sit down who takes a look at both spending and revenue and says this is a problem on both sides and we need to get something done. We've had years and years to talk about this. We've had years and years to do something. Nothing has been done. My biggest problem is with unrealized gains. And you can go back again and say that this is only for people who make over $100 million. That clearly doesn't impact me, is not going to be an issue when I'm looking at these things. But when the first American income tax was put in place in 1861, it was a flat 3% tax on all incomes over $800. We know how that has changed over time. unrealized gains, taxing unrealized gains just doesn't seem fair in any sense of the word. In the very best sense, if you are taxing unrealized gains, all you're doing is pulling forward the taxes that would be paid later when someone actually sells the stock.
I think that this reaction to unrealized gains is a little funny, given that I bet that the majority of people watching right now are already paying a tax on unrealized gains. It's called a property tax. When the value of your home goes up,
it's a use tax.
When the value of your home goes up, you pay higher taxes, even if you don't sell your home.
Your value of your home never moves the way a stock moves, the way something else moves that you don't sell.
Answer.
It's also, property tax is a use tax. You're paying for the schools, you're paying for emergency services. Those are things that make absolute sense.
And sure, and all the revenue that comes in from these unrealized gains taxes and the other taxes in the Harris plan are going to go to creating what she calls more opportunity. It's to make sure that every newborn born in this country gets $6,000.
Using the services.
Well, look, you're arguing that this is some sort of foreign concept that's completely unknown in the U.S. tax code.
It's probably unconstitutional. It's probably, and it was never in anyone's intent to.
It's not income. It's not an income tax.
And
if
it's
you're
never going to
happen.
Gain. Probably not. Well, I'm not going to say my lifetime.
I wouldn't say that.
Not in Becky's lifetime. Yeah.
Well, look, I want to just step back and say that the Harris tax plan overall is about providing money for investments that go into middle-class family uses, to affordable housing, to this child tax credit, to make sure that every newborn starts with $6,000 in the account, something that they can use to get off to a healthy and nutritious start, to making sure that we can address the cost of childcare, things that middle-class families are really struggling with for the past few decades. And so,
no question that something needs to be done for middle-class families. I think the question becomes how you go about doing it. But Bharat, thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your explanation of this stuff. And thanks for coming on a day when this story came out. I appreciate the clarification.
Bharat, you should be happy. You didn't have to defend price controls. So we didn't get to that.
Please have me back. I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, well, you don't want to do that. Okay, thank you.
And that's the podcast for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, or listen to this podcast anytime you want. Get the best of our daily morning show right here in a 30-minute, easy-to-listen-to format. Hit that follow button wherever you're listening now. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.